Well, tonight we're going to talk about how to accept this grant and what it means now that you got a grant, especially what it means that you got a grant with the Indiana Arts Commission in the state of Indiana. So you should have received a formal notification that you received a grant award. Yay! Do a little dance. I loved seeing all of the little screenshots on social media and all the love floating around for everyone. So congratulations. I hope that you think about how you can take advantage of that. It kind of carries some weight. I mean, so I feel humbled and excited for you to say that an Indiana Arts Commission grant is kind of hard to get. And if you can think about putting this maybe on your resume, or if there's something you want to add to if you use a biography anywhere, or other places, go ahead and do that. Take advantage, leverage this award and this fellowship in a way that really affirms this level of commitment that you have for your creative career. This is an accolade for you, all the work you've put into this. Is this the first time is this anybody's first grant? Yeah, amazing. Congratulations. Yes, I see 2 raised hands, 3, 4. Oh, congratulations, everybody. So the seal is broken. Now you have no reason to keep applying for other grants. It's my, I guess, like MO to make this as easy as it can be for you. Susan says my brain still hurts. I totally get that. So you can take a minute to really enjoy this and actually do the work, but know that you have done some of the hardest work already. You have already seen the inside of how a grant decision is made. Some of you may still have some work to do. We'll talk a little bit about that, right? But this is basically a grant with some safety guards on it, right? You were always going to receive this grant. So we want you to use this as a learning opportunity, so that when you continue to seek other funding or investment opportunities, maybe you can understand a little bit more about the type of information that someone might be looking for, or the type of planning that might need to be done before, during, and even after the grant is finished. So today, I am going to walk you through how to accept funds from the government, how to actually accept this grant award. You've been offered it, now you actually do have to accept it. I'm going to talk about the requirements and the things that you should keep in mind throughout this grant period. I'm going to tell you what to do when things go wrong, when things don't go according to your beautiful, amazing, perfect proposal, and what you need to be doing when you're finished with this grant process. So first, has anybody had a chance to listen to the panel discussion or read the written comments from their panelists? Yeah. Yes. Okay. What was that like?
This is Lisa. I kind of felt when I was listening to it that it felt like they didn't read what I wrote down, or didn't understand completely what I was trying to convey. And I know I was disappointed that I submitted like 10 photographs of my work, and by the time they opened up, the proposal, that the Dropbox had expired. And I wish that I would have known that, and maybe could have, submitted that again so they could see the photograph. So I thought that was kind of a disadvantage for me, because they didn't get to see my body of work, and that would have explained a lot too.
Absolutely. Yes. That's exactly right, Lisa. And what I love about these next few steps for us is now we get to rectify some of that, right? So this process is hopefully going to be revealing of peeling back some of the layers of, if you apply for a grant in the future and you know, you may not get all of this kind of information. You may not get to hear the deliberation. Every funder does something a little bit differently and is able to offer a little bit different type of feedback or transparency into their own processes. So those moments might be things that, just learning experiences. Then you're exactly right. You said exactly it. Folks don't always read things the way that you meant them to read it, right? Or the way that you really took a lot of time to craft that message. And sometimes they just don't get up to absorb all that information. So you can get better at it though. Absolutely. It can become more clear. So this is a great learning opportunity. What else? What was that like for anybody else who listens to their panel feedback? Yeah, Idris?
So first they said that I had too much of sample work for them to look at. And I thought that was supposed to be intentional so that they have a variety of, get a sense of what I do and stuff. And the second, I was, I was told not to write stuff out and use bullet points so to get to the point quicker, and so that everybody can, because they go through it fast and stuff like that. And they criticized me for that too. Too. So yeah, they did in the video. And I thought the in-kind one was not supposed to factor in. And but that is part of what they put in here, that I need to consider if project expenses are realistic and correct in-kind contribution. Maybe I just like remove in-kind completely. I don't know. And also consider ways to deepen community engagement as mutually beneficial for two-way relationship. I don't understand what I kind of get what they're saying, but I never stop community engagement even after the on-ramp event, because I got my first community engagement with the radio station with NPR and did that interview and talked about on-ramp and talked about Minecraft. And then I've been going to shows and performing since coming back from on-ramp. So I don't know. Maybe I just need to include that in this the rework that I'm doing. And that should be okay.
Right. Yeah, and one other thing that I heard in there is like some of this stuff can be hard to hear. It's confusing and sometimes, and again, you got the grant. We have to do. Everybody has a little bit of something to that is either a little bit of something that needs to be adjusted before we can go into contract, but you did it, right?
Right.
Sometimes hearing all of that, those details of the fuzzy points isn't helpful, but I hope that was useful to maybe get inside the brain of a stranger who might be making decisions or making recommendations in the future.
Sure.
Any other last thoughts? Hi, Christina.
Hi. So I guess I'm so appreciative of this experience, like 2000%. And I want to know, I guess my main question is, when I watched the panel, they seemed like they compared us all against each other sometimes. Like, I feel like when they opened with the first proposal, it was kind of like, they were like, well, this was the best written one because some of the others were difficult to get through. And I like, whenever they came to, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be dramatic. And I meant to send you an email because I hate being dramatic. So I sometimes don't know if I should like state my concerns. But also, so me and 3 other artists are doing a group show in Evansville. And one of the ladies said that one of the gentleman artists from the cohort it would hurt his status to show his work along with us other 3. And I guess, is that normal, or should that have been something that they could have let him know on the side instead of comparing us all out in front of each other? Because like, I feel like kind of like they didn't look at my resume and all the shows that I've had. And I really feel like I didn't receive much feedback other than I probably won't become a full-time artist, and I should just become an art therapist. And then somebody else told me to just spread my work around as opposed to putting it into mental health facilities, which if they saw my resume, they could see that I have spent years spreading it around to all different sorts of places. And so I just thought it was kind of critical, and I didn't know what other people may have thought. And is that normal, or will they be in the future trained to maybe not compare us against each other?
Yeah, great questions. All of these panelists were trained in exactly that. And you can rest assured that while sometimes they make comments that maybe don't need to be said in a public meeting, they did only have the ability to evaluate you on the same things. And that was your project feasible? Did it help you reach your goals? And is there some aspect of community engagement in it? So now let's go ahead and talk about how to move forward, right? How to use feedback, use what was important. Sometimes it's okay to forget what is not relevant and to keep going on with what you know is right for you. And there are also some elements for some people that we'll need to address together before we go into contract, right? So now let's get into some of that good stuff. So it sounds like you had the opportunity to listen to some of the feedback. I'm going to share my screen now. If you have not already, be sure that you log into the online system. And hang on a second. Sorry, I'm still trying to share my screen. And fill out this form. So this is just a screenshot for now. This is what is on your dashboard right now. So when you log into the online system and you're on your dashboard, you scroll down to the bottom, and underneath this OnRamp 2021, this is like all of the things that have to do with OnRamp 2021. You'll find that some forms, some additional things have shown up here, maybe since the last time you looked at it. Most importantly, or most time sensitive, is this next steps in the electronic grant agreement form. It's a next step or follow-up form. So you'll come all the way over here to this edit button and click edit. And we're going to walk through that form together here. This form, by submitting this form, you are officially accepting your grant award and you're signing a contract for executing the proposal that was approved. There are a couple of other things on the same screen. Your final grant report is here, but you can't edit it yet. Once you submit this form, then you will be able to edit it, or once this form has been approved, then you'll be able to edit the final grant report. We can take a look at it today. I'll give you a peek inside of it, even though you can't access it quite yet. You also, in the same view, this is where you can view any written panelist comments. So in addition to the live public meeting that we had on Zoom, we asked them to write down some comments for you. So they may not have all shared verbally during the discussion, but likely all of them had a little bit of something to highlight what was really amazingly strong in your grant proposal, and also the things that they are advising you might think about adjusting. You also have an award letter uploaded to your dashboard to this request. This is the official offer of your grant, and it's basically just official documentation, tells you how much you've been awarded, and yeah, it does it's just kind of just for your records. Is there a question? Okay, let's take a look at the form then. All right, are you all seeing a form on the screen? Great. This is the form that's been assigned to you. I'm going to zoom in. a
Jenny,
little.
hush. Oh, I'm not muted.
All right, when you first open it up, this form is intended to walk you through the steps that are needed in kind of a logical fashion. So I would suggest you read all of the text here. I'm not going to read you everything today because you can read, but I can walk you through a couple of the big things and answer any questions. So make sure that you still have those guidelines, the grant guidelines handy, right? If you are somebody who is organized and already has like a Dropbox folder of all your grant documents, make sure that you, or like have a printed out binder or something like that, go ahead and make sure that the guidelines are there as well, right? These will never change. And these are the rules and requirements for your grant. And so they are applicable throughout this entire grant process for this specific fellowship reward. Okay. This is not your first time seeing them. This is the same stuff that you saw before you applied. It's also bound in your on-ramp workbook at the back of your workbook. A few of the things that you should know about: you will receive you will be mailed a check from Arts Midwest, which is a partner of ours. So they are legit, Arts Midwest, and the check may be coming from Minnesota, which is where they are based, but they're just our partner in this program, the administration of these payments. Your grant is going to be paid to you in 2 payments. The first payment will be made at the beginning of this grant period. So as soon as you submit this form and it is good to go and I approve it, then basically that signals a message that your check can be cut and mailed, right? So the sooner you get it in, the sooner you can get your check. You'll receive 75% of your total grant award at that time. Then the remaining 25% of your award can be paid to you after you submit your final grant report and it's approved. I'll show you more about that final grant report in a second. Well, I guess we'll jump down here and say that it is due September 1st, 2022 at 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. So go ahead and put that on your calendar now. Put it a week ahead of time. Remind yourself, my final grant report is due. That's a year from now, more than a year from now. So don't forget about that. When you finish your proposal, when you've finished what you proposed, you can submit your final grant report before September 1st. You can submit it in March. If you have everything that you proposed to do completely finished, you can submit your final grant report early and receive that second payment early. But know that that second payment feels a little bit more like a reimbursement than an upfront payment for that part of your grant, right? So just plan for that. You will, at some point during your fellowship project, need to publicly acknowledge the Indiana Arts Commission. And you can do that in a written form. You can just acknowledge it verbally if you're like with a group of, if you're teaching a class or something, or you can put it somewhere on like a sign or a handout or your website, really depending on what works best for you and for the project that you're doing. You just need to do it once, but you can find our logo and a few tips for doing that at this link. There are several things at this link that you'll need to know about. Okay. If at any time during this grant, you need to make major changes, then you're going to contact me and we'll talk about that soon. So the first big step in this follow-up form is to address any required modifications. Not everyone will have modifications required for their grant. Some people have minor things that we just noticed that the panel brought up. They were, had questions about or felt concerned about. And so we've just asked you, would you just respond to this thing that they brought up? Maybe we just need a little bit more context. Just tell us a little bit more about what's going on. And so you can just write a little bit more about that aspect that they, made them feel a little bit more nervous. Maybe we just need a little bit more information, or maybe you've done some planning and resolved any issue that they brought up since that panel. That's great. You may be asked to meet with me one-on-one. That means that, there may be some more comprehensive things about the proposal that will just be easier if we talk it out, and I help you change what's written in your application form instead of just writing it in a small box. You may not need any modifications at all. Seemed like the panel was comfortable with the proposal as it was, so there's no required modifications. A lot of the things that the panel brought up may be really helpful to you. They may have illuminated something that you hadn't thought about, or maybe they are professionals in a different aspect of what you're doing, and have given you advice that's useful to modify your plan. And so if you are not required to make any given modification, but you want to because you think it's good advice, that's great. You can totally do that. That's what this section of the form is, right? So this required modifications, this is something that I will have written in. You won't be able to edit this part of your form. This is what we are requiring in order to move forward with this contract. Then this next box is where you'll respond. So you can, in whatever way that the required modification has asked you to, provide a little bit more information or write down when you scheduled a time to meet with me. You can put that there. Or if you're not required to make any modifications and you don't think you want to anyway, then you can just type NA, not applicable, and move on to the rest of the form. Okay, there is a question in the chat that says, does it really take 90 days for the first payment? Great question. Sometimes, but it seems like right now, all of the agencies involved in signing and approving a contract or approving the dispersal of a payment have been running pretty smoothly. And so it has not been taking that long this year, really. It's only been a couple of weeks, but it could. So you can, if you're wondering where it is, you can email me, check in, and I'll ask our bookkeeping folks. But I do not anticipate it taking that long. I anticipate it taking maybe 2 weeks after your form is approved. Heidi, I saw you raise your hand. Did you have a question?
So I have a modification I need to make. I think it's going to be a simple one. It was smart what they were suggesting I look at. Is that something that I can just type in my own response? I don't need to meet with you, and I just put it in. You guys were right. Here's how I'm addressing that. Then how long does it take before then I get back? Okay, this is a go, and then I can get the money and start.
Great questions. Yeah, correct. You can just type it in. If this first required modifications doesn't explicitly say meet with Anna, you don't have to. Just do it. Submit that form, and then when I see that it comes in, I read it, sign off on it, approve it, and start the payment processing. So if you've done it in the last few days, I've been out of the office with another on-ramp, so I have not done it this week, but I'm sure I'll see it tomorrow morning when I get in.
Can I follow up to that?
Yeah.
Will I then hear back from you that it's going, or only not if it doesn't seem to meet the standard of what they're looking for?
Correct.
Okay. So it'll just, if I don't hear from you, it's a go.
Oh, sorry. You will get a confirmation email.
I'll get confirmation either way.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Susan asked, I thought we filled out direct deposit information. Did the method of payment change? Yes. Sorry. Any other questions so far? Okay, great.
You're muted, Anna. Your mic is muted.
Thank you, Joyce. I didn't notice. Paige, your hand is raised.
I was just telling you you were muted. I'm so
Thank
sorry.
you, everybody. I need that many people looking out. Okay, your next step is to send public official thank you letters. This is a requirement of receiving this grant. I cannot approve your first payment until this is done. You are required to send 2 thank you letters to 2 different state elected officials. So that's at the state level. It could be, actually, it could be your state or your US Congress members. It's not your mayor, it's not your city council people. You'll send one at the very beginning of your grant period. So in this form, well, you'll send it at the time that you accept your grant. And you'll send another one to actually it could either be the same or a different elected official at the end when you finish your proposal. So basically, when you submit your final grant report, that form will also ask you, did you send your letter? One of those needs to go, one of those needs to be a handwritten letter. You can find the address of your elected officials right here. There's a link in this form. This is a handy little generator that just type in your home address, and it could be different from even somebody else in your hometown. Your legislator may be a different person, so just type in your home address and it'll tell you who your members of state senate, the state House of Representatives, and your members of Congress are for your given location. So just send a thank you letter when you sign your contract, and then scan it or save it as a PDF and upload it right here. I am not sending them. I'm just signing off that I've seen it. So you actually do need to pop it in the mail or send them. If it's an email, you can do that too. So this database will give you both their mailing address. I think it will also give you an email address for their office. You can do either of those. Okay, Susan's asking, I've already emailed my legislator and invited him to my event. Is a screenshot okay for documentation? Yes. Yes. Is the letter step before or after the money arrives? Got it. It is before. It is at the time when you submit this follow-up form. You need to upload what you have already sent, folks. Okay. There's a few tips in here of how to write that. You don't need to overthink it. Actually, the reason that one of these is required to be handwritten is because, believe it or not, senators and representatives like to know they're talking to real people. So you don't need to be super fancy or overly professional, but definitely tell them, who you are. And the point of this is to remind your legislators that the decisions they make about the budget and about state policy affects their constituents. And here is one right in front of them. So it could be a great opportunity, like Susan has already done, to invite them. If you have something happening that makes sense that maybe they would want to be seen at, or maybe they just would enjoy, right? Legislators enjoy going to concerts and seeing your creative work and feeling proud of their community. Feel free to enjoy them if you want, or invite them if you want. You don't have to. Okay, so you will upload that here. You'd only have to do one at this time. If you want to send it to every single legislator, awesome, go for it. Knock yourself out. You only need to do one at this time. You have already, now we're moving on to step 3, which is required documents for payment. Actually, you have already submitted the required documents for payment. You have already submitted a W-9 form. If there are changes to that form, which would really be like if you changed your name or your social security or tax ID changed, then send us a new one, but we should have what we need from you already. please type your mailing address here. Pretty simple. Okay, now this is the next big step to review and sign your grant agreement. You can certainly, you should read through this grant, this contract. If you have questions or concerns about what's in here, call me. I'll talk you through it. I'll explain to you exactly what that's talking about. This is just a good, this is the state's boilerplate contract, basically a contract for professional services. So what you are doing is you are now entering a contract with the state of Indiana to do a specific job. And that is what you proposed in your fellowship proposal. That is now your job to do. You got to do it. You have to do exactly what you proposed, which is why we take a moment to make sure we incorporate any necessary modifications before we move forward, right? That also means that during the grant, if something comes up where, man, I thought I was going to be able to get this piece of equipment, everything I researched at that time, it seemed like it was going to make sense, or wow, I got into this project and realized that my audience doesn't communicate the way that I thought they did. And so I don't think investing in a website is exactly what I need to do anymore. But there is a slightly different approach I can take by, I don't know, maybe shifting into social media. Whenever those things happen, you need to call me so that if we need to modify what you've proposed, we get it written down and amended in your contract so that you are in compliance with your contract with the state of Indiana. It's pretty amazing that the state is hiring you to do exactly what you want to. That's how I look at it. That's what I love about this opportunity, is that you've already told the state what you want to do, and they're saying, awesome, you have to do it now. So it's a little bit of a good accountability. Some of the things that I do want to highlight, this requirements of grant recipients, this stuff is linked in your, you'll see this in a lot of places. It will show up in your contract as you're reading through that. It shows up in the guidelines here. And this is the link we're going to look at here. The detailed requirements of a grant recipient. You will need to submit your thank you letters, follow the acknowledgement requirements, complete this contract that's in front of you, follow our processes for modifying a grant proposal, what we just talked about, and you need to submit your final report by the due date. You also need to make sure that your project is in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, which essentially means that if somebody who wants to participate in what you're doing requests some kind of accommodation, you need to make that accommodation. It doesn't mean that you need to build a ramp to your building just because you've got a grant for this. Is it a good idea? Yes, but you are not required, just because you're under this contract, to make all of the changes to your physical space or other accessibility accommodations, but you do need to if you are contacted and asked for it. Let's see, you should flip through these state contracting requirements. Now this stuff just shows you like things that we will have to have on file when we're in contract with you. You don't need to worry about it at this point, but it is good for you to know. Our federal requirements, this stuff is not applicable to you because you are not an arts organization, a nonprofit organization. But there are a few things in here that you might just take a look at, like, yeah, you're still as in contract with the state of Indiana required to follow some of these policies, required policies. Okay. I wanted to just hover for a moment on funding acknowledgement requirements. I already mentioned this. You only need to do it once, and there are many different ways you can do it. But these are just like examples of where you could do it. Now, all of this information is also applicable to our grantees who are organizations such as the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra, the Evansville African American History Museum, right? So just because all of this information is aiming to be both applicable to an individual glass artist and also an arts organization. So we know you probably don't have billboards, but just know that we're communicating to a little bit of a wider audience. So as we scroll down here to the on-ramp, Creative Entrepreneur Accelerator. Actually, this is not correct. I need to contact our communications folks about this. You are only required to have the Indiana Arts Commission logo on it. That will appear here shortly. Okay. So I'm going to let you spend some time with this. If you have questions about any of these aspects, reach out to me. I think I've already hit the high points of things you might run into. But what questions do you have so far about any of these requirements? Okay.
Anna, this is Lisa. In looking through that list, do we have to have a DUNS number? The
No.
DUNS number? Okay.
Nope.
So that's not required.
Nope.
Okay, cool. Great.
You are an individual. We are contracting with you as an individual.
Okay.
So do not have one, and you do not need one for this contract.
Okay.
That is different if we were contracting with a nonprofit organization.
Okay.
Okay. All right, now let's get into what to do when you're done with this grant. You are going to, when you finish what you've proposed, you're going to be able to fill out your final grant report. And you remember that this shows up again on your dashboard, right underneath the next steps in grant agreement form. So there will be an edit button here just as soon as your contract is approved, basically. But let's look at it together. There are some, most of this form are things that we are required to report to our state and federal funders. And so some of the like quantitative, like not hard numbers that you will have to count are just true across the board, and there's no way around it. There are a couple of things. First off, we want to know, did you do what you said you were going to do? Okay, right? Same thing that we've been talking about all along. If, like I already said, if anything during your grant, any of your plans really changed or something went wrong, or you're not going to be able to do what it is that you proposed, call me. Don't hesitate. Don't wait. I am a problem solver with you. You are not in trouble when that happens, okay? But we do need to document it. We do need to come to basically an understanding of what's going to happen instead and then document it. So that happens, we would say, like, if your project goals, methods, key personnel or facilities or dates change significantly, something that feels like a significant change, you need to call me. Or if something that in your budget, your total project budget, maybe it's $2,000, everything that you're spending on this project, maybe it's $2,000, maybe it's $6,000. Everybody's a little bit different, even though they're all getting $2,000, right? If your total project budget changed by more than 20%, maybe you spent more on this project, or you had big savings and ended up only spending $2,500 on it instead of $8,000. That's crazy. Or if you realize that maybe lumber is going to go down someday soon, right? And you ended up spending a lot less on a specific line item that meant that money within your budget got reallocated. If those changes were more than 20% of your total project cost, then you need to contact me. So for example, if you have a project budget of $2,000 and maybe it's just the IAC grant that's going into this project, and you maybe you ended up spending more on travel and less on the videographer, and so instead of, now you have these changes ended up being more than $400, maybe you were moving something from one line to the next or whatever, then you need to contact me. You need to do that before you get to this grant, Frontal grant report. We're going to ask you, there's a couple of kind of wonky things in here, which best describes the funded activity. This is, again, just some of our federal requirements. So just select what is most applicable to you. We're going to ask you, where exactly did your grant activities take place in the state of Indiana? Yes, it can happen out of Indiana, but where within Indiana did it take place? Again, another one that you just need to select what best applies for your grant. We do want to know how, if any of your grant was a arts education, right? And we mean a systematic educational effort with the primary goal of increasing an identified learner's knowledge of and/or skills in the arts with measurable outcomes. So that's, you are intentionally teaching another learner knowledge of arts and culture or skills in the arts, and you're thinking about measurable outcomes in that. You know, again, you do not have to do that, but we want to know if you did. This is something the federal government is measuring. There are some aspects that you'll need to count the people who are attending. So we want to know how many adults, how many children, how many artists. It should be at least one artist because that's you. Might be more. If you had any active electronic participants. So we're not asking about how many followers do you have. We're asking, if you did a virtual workshop, how many people were in it? We want to know generally if there was a large, more than 25% of the people who participated in your activities, which race or ethnicity they identify as, age range they identify as, and if they identify as in any of these distinct groups. And we want you to tell us, how much did you actually spend? I do not need any receipts. You should keep your receipts or keep record of these expenses for your own financial practices, right? Because these are probably business expenses. But I do not need to see them. I just need to know, how much did you spend? Did you spend it all? Everything that you said you were going to spend on the grant, did you do that? Here's a tip. Don't spend this money on something else. Even if it's a cash flow issue, like I know I will have a lot more money in my business account because my main sales, the fair, the festival where I make most of my sales of the year happens later in the year, and I need the car repair now, and I have the money in my bank now. Don't mix those two, right? Keep this money set aside for the expenses of this grant. If you need to open another bank account, make sure it's a free one. Don't spend money on opening a bank account. Then that's great if that's what's important to you. Don't intermingle these in your own personal expenses. These are taxable dollars. So a grant is a taxable expense. And you probably will get a 1099 form at the end of the year for that first payment. And you'll probably get it again in 2022 for the second payment, unless you did both of them in 2021. But you should consult with a CPA on how you need to report expenses related to this project. It could be relevant to you as a business expense, or it may not be how you want to report that. Okay, then finally, we just want to know, did it help you reach any of these goals? Tell us a little bit more about that. What resources did you use? And then you'll fill out, for the very last time, you will actually fill out that post-workshop assessment one more time a year later. We like to see, how are you feeling since you took this assessment before on-ramp, right after on-ramp, and now a year later, did this stuff stick? That assessment doesn't have any bearing on if your fellowship was successful or it doesn't have any bearing on you at all. It's just our own assessment of ourselves, the IAC, and is on-ramp effective for you, okay? We also ask you to, we ask, because it's a requirement of your grants, to use our logo somewhere or acknowledge the IAC somewhere. We ask you to upload documentation of that. So a screenshot of something is fine. Or just a note that said, I said this in my presentation, whatever it is. This is where you upload your second thank you letter to the legislator. And if you got any pictures, we like to see them. Don't have to. That's your final report. You don't need to write up anything else. You don't need to submit any kind of like major summary of every activity that you did. This is the information that we're looking for, okay? Any questions? Okay. Heidi.
I think this is specific to my project, but I'm not sure how I would, in fact, I'm almost certain I will not know any of the demographics because of
Oh, I have an idea, Heidi.
the numbers. Yeah.
So let me follow up with you on that offline, okay?
Okay, great.
Great question, but
Specific.
yes. And if any of these kind of questions come up for you guys at any point, you can give me a call. I've done a lot of these. I've read a lot of final reports, so I have some ideas of how people have done it in the past.
Okay. Should I look for email from you, or do you want me to tag you to remind you?
Yeah, that's great. I know you already emailed me and I've been out of the office, so we'll check in tomorrow.
Okay.
Great. Okay. All right. That's it. Y'all are so ready to get off to the races, aren't you? Some of us, we're gonna meet together. Sorry, I missed that. Some of us, we're gonna meet together one more time and finalize your plans and finalize what goes in that contract. But this is all you need to do to get started on your grant. And just more to Christina's point earlier, you know what you need, you know best, right? And the things that are written in the required modifications, that's the only stuff that you're required to address. So I hope that more of the panel feedback, I hope that the things that were helpful, I hope those stick. And the things that are not helpful and also not required for you to keep thinking about or adjust, water off a duck's back, right? Let it inform how you continue to communicate about your work in the future. But remember that you know your work best and you know your goals best. And we believe in you. The stuff, like, we're excited for you to get started too, okay? So go ahead and submit that follow-up form as soon as you can so I can pay you and you can get started. Congratulations, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You too. Good night,
Bye.
all.